What do you think about our conservation approaches? Do you think humans should be hands-on with conservation, or would it be more effective to create space for nature to do its own thing, or is it dependent on the animal trying to protect all the ecosystem?
I think there's room for both approaches. Certainly, it seems to me that nature doesn't really need help. It just needs to be left alone for the most part. If you just back off a little bit, it'll sort itself out without any help. But certainly there are cases where intervention is absolutely necessary. So, for example, if you look at some really good conservation studies from New Zealand, which has suffered a lot since contact to things like the takahe or the kakapo, where their numbers were reduced to a handful. And then through intense conservation methods, they've been able to bring them back to strong, viable numbers and release them into areas where they were previously but hadn't been seen for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's room for both approaches, I think, and very much on a case by case basis.
And for the UK, I know we've mentioned rewilding and reintroductions. What do you think are some other broader, more widespread, effective methods we can potentially do to increase our biodiversity?
Certainly, like in the islands, I know that deer fencing has had, I think, a net positive effect on biodiversity, just because the huge numbers of deer that we have up here and the kind of devastation they cause to saplings. If they can be kept out of an area, that allows trees to grow past a threshold where they're not edible to deer anymore, and that helps with biodiversity up here. But yeah, going back to what I was saying earlier about us being an island, that makes it tricky. I think there is some space for a kind of just leave things alone argument, but because we're dependent on, if we want to get anything back, we have to get it from somewhere else. It's not going to get there by itself. We have to intervene at some stage, as we did with the beaver, the red kite, and the seagull.
How optimistic should we be about the future of our biodiversity and the future of conservation, not just in the UK, but globally?
Certainly, I feel more optimistic now, having seen, even in the past 40, 50 years, successful reintroductions happened by dedicated, committed individuals like Derek Gow and Roy Dennis, who've been instrumental in some of the successful reintroductions we've had. The work they've done has been amazing. And it's been, driven by these enthusiastic, dynamic personalities. And they show that it can be done if you want it enough. Having the beaver back, having the red kites. I've seen red kites every time I go over the bridge to the Black Isle. You see them hovering around the road because they've spread so successfully. These are great success stories. And I think we can only move forward from there. We have these examples which can lead us to a more diverse future. We have the kind of expertise and the people still around to help.
Yeah, and speaking of red kites, as a kid flicking through bird books, a lot of my childhood, I would see red kites and it'd be a speck in Wales where their population distribution was. And then going towards Cornwall from where I'm originally from in Kent, just seeing them soaring
Yeah.
over the motorways, being in absolute disbelief that they're here. And then even buzzards, like when I'd go to France on road trips, me and my dad would always be excited when we see a buzzard because in Kent there just wasn't as many. I don't know if that was because of maybe DDT and persecution, but fast forward a decade and they're everywhere in
Yeah.
my local area. So I think being optimistic and realizing that we can reintroduce these species or help them come back from the brink is just so positive and makes you want to do more of it.
Absolutely. And I think attitudes have definitely changed over the past century. If you think back to the beginning of the 20th century, when a lot of these species were essentially going extinct. The last seagulls are around 1901 or so. The idea of bringing that back then would have just been totally anathema. They just wouldn't have countenanced it. But now I think we have, even if we're not very biodiverse, we have quite a conservation literate population, thanks to Sir David and BBC Bristol. There's a lot more goodwill towards the environment and also an understanding of how important biodiversity is.
Yeah. My mind randomly thought of owls. I have a place near me in Kent, a kind of conservation park or that do rewilding projects, such as the bison project called Wildwood. I remember seeing an eagle owl, like one of the really, really big ones. It said they used to be in the UK. I was just wondering if that was true, because I don't know if my memory's correct.
I think that the eagle owl, there's possible evidence for them being around, and certainly maybe one of the knock-on effects of having large herbivores like bison around in the amount of dung they're producing, that's going to be attracting insects, that's going to be attracting small mammals, going to be attracting owls as well. So, maybe it's an example of these kind of positive knock-on effects from having reintroduced large megafauna to these islands.
What would the eagle owls hunt on?
Good question. You'd have to ask my dad, who knows way more.
Yeah.
I imagine they'd be small mammals of some sort, like moles and shrews, something like that.
Yeah. And I just wonder why they haven't been reintroduced already across the UK if they were once there.
Could they possibly already be here?
I'm not sure because I saw it it was caged. It wasn't an actual wild one. So it just makes me wonder why they're not here already.
Yeah. I know that some species of owl aren't the best flyer. Maybe they've struggled to get with the channel. I'm just checking out the BTO. They say that there's sporadic breeding of eagle owls in England.
Oh, wow. Really? I thought there'd be quite a few in Scotland, just in the forests.
Yeah, that might be worth looking more into. Certainly, there's other kind of large birds that occasionally wandered back, so and been helped back as well. So things like cranes and storks, we're sort of starting to see make the UK a stop-off point and even stay over winter. That's great.